Joe and part-time baseball umpire. Tonight's guest, his life experience with the people of Baghdad, is Joseph Floucher. Joe was born in the Bronx, New York, and as a young man, he took his vows as a Jesuit in the Catholic Church in 1950. Harry?
Yeah, I was just waiting for this song to end here.
Well, can't you talk over it?
Yes, I can. And
go ahead.
And it's me, Harry.
Yeah.
I'm here as Friday's co-host as usual.
User? You're a user?
Usual. And Joe Floucher was assigned to Baghdad College, which was a Jesuit high school where he taught physics and math from 1955 to 58. He then returned to Boston College where he studied Arabic and received his master's in physics. In 1962, he returned to Baghdad as an administrator of the school. His first 6 months back, he lived with an Arab family, not by the name of Hussein, was it by any chance?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. To become fluent in the language. Thanks, Joe, for making a long trip from downstate, down in Fairfield, to be on our show tonight.
And thank you for having me.
Joe, Hussein, is that sort of like Smith or Jones over here in the U.S.?
Yeah.
It is really a very common name?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that. Joe returned to America in 1968 after the 1967 Arab-Israeli War. The Iraqi government shut down the school and the Jesuits were sent home. Americans were considered pro-Israel. Joe continued teaching in the order until 1980, and then he was assigned to a retreat house in Gloucester, Mass. During these years, Joe realized he had lost his vocation to the priesthood, left the order in 1990, and married soon after, and now lives in Fairfield, Connecticut.
Okay, everyone, this is Let's Talk About It, a weekly public affairs program of WILI Radio, broadcast live each week at this time and replayed on Charter Community TV Channel 14 every other Monday at 11 a.m. and every Friday at 8 p.m. Throughout the week, you can catch our classics, you can catch a lot of shows. And by the way, I want to tell our listeners, we have videos available, a package of 3 for $19.95. Now, for those of you who are salesmen who drive throughout New England, we have audio cassettes, rather, for $19.95. You get a packet of 5 in a little book, and it shows it's got a bio of Alan and myself. My bio is probably about 3 pages long. Alan's is maybe...
Look at the time he's wasting. I wanted to talk about the mills.
And T-shirt and coffee mug if you
mugs.
order these things within the next 10 minutes.
And a Harry and Alan coffee.
Call the producer.
Yeah, Harry, I just want, before we get in, Joe, I know I asked you if you knew anything about the Wyndham Mill debacle.
We discussed it last night,
I
Alan.
know it, but I was away. I didn't get an opportunity
Joe, that's
to bring
your problem.
anything
That's
up.
your fault.
Can I just bring a little? I just want to bring, I was helping the kids out, Harry. Can I just bring up a little bit? Now I know why. The Wyndham Mills, well, not the Wyndham Mills, but the people who are buying it. Was it Natural Resources or National RE, National Resources, whatever they're called. The reason they didn't want to buy the mills, they don't want to close the deal. They want to keep the current board of directors in play. They're looking for that $6 million plus grant that they've already applied for, the mills directors. Is that true? So if they take that $6 million, add it to the $7.2 million at the Connecticut, was it DEC?
Whatever.
Department of Economic Development or whatever, the state group wants to forgive the $2.25 million that the taxpayers of Wyndham have given them. That puts them up to what? What are we, over $15 million? They're going to assume $14 million worth of debt. They're going to get over $15 in cash, and they're going to put $1 up. Not a bad deal.
Listen, I hope they approve it. I hope they approve the budget.
And I hear, Harry, you want to vote yes,
vote yes and everything. Bring the city to its knees as quick as possible.
Can the selectmen be that dumb to accept
Don't
that
ask
type of a deal?
Look,
No, I just want to know if they can.
Now you're making me mad, Alan. That's a dumb question to ask the question if the selectmen can be that dumb.
Are the selectmen that dumb? I want to know. Are they, Harry?
I refuse to answer that question.
What do you refuse? On what ground?
Joe, I refuse. Let's go talk about other things.
They're dumb like a fox.
They're dumb like a fox?
They're dumb.
Dumb like
foxes. Are dumb.
Huh?
Look at our Main Street.
Yeah.
Joe, did you see our Main Street? Did you drive down? Yeah. Are you in the market for any property? We have this beautiful historic building called Tinsin Building. Well, it's really a Chapman block, but we call it the Tinsin Building. You like Chinese architecture?
You like Chinese food?
Come on.
Yeah, I've heard about China.
Chinese.
Well, I'm just telling you, we got a guy here. We can probably get Joe. The question is, you're here today. One of our close friends has introduced you to the show. We call him Legal Dave Wolanchevitz, who was recently from the Institute of Living. Released from the Institute of Living in Hartford. And he calls our show once in a while, and he advocates positions that are so far off the wall. He wants safe heroin houses. We were known as Heroin Town at one time, or still are, rather. And he's very involved in his letters to the editor. I mean, they just they drive people crazy. And I guess he suggested you to be on, and because you had a background in Baghdad. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You were there. Well, you were there in the '60s.
I was first there from 1955
55.
to 58.
58. And talk into this, Joe, because it'll be.
I was there from 55 to 58.
And then you went back in the '60s, early '60s.
That's right.
Now, did you ever go after you left in the '60s, right after the year that 6-Day War, right?
That's right.
Okay. You never went back since then.
No.
Joe, my question to you, as a person who obviously had an interest there, you spent 8 years or 6 years there, or at different times, 3 years, then 8 years or 6 years. What's happened in the last year, and especially in the last 3 or 4 weeks? What is your take on this whole thing? What feelings run through you?
Well, I think it's very, very understandable. What happened on the part of the Americans, or what happened on the reaction from the Iraqis?
The whole thing. In other words, the fact that we went to war with them, the fact that we're changing the country over now to supposedly to a democracy, the fact that Hussein had this country for 30 years. I guess Hussein was not in power, and you were there in the 60s, right?
he got in power. We were out of Baghdad for about a year. About, I'd say 3 weeks after we left Baghdad in 58. The king was killed by an army group.
Okay.
And the prime minister, Nuri Said, was also killed. And the army took over
In 58.
in 58.
Okay. Now,
And then,
so we had a dictatorship. Well, we always had a dictatorship. We had a king. I mean, they had a king, and they had a monarchy.
but it wasn't, it was before 58, it was a very, very peaceful place. It really was.
But was it a monarchy like they have today? I mean,
Oh,
one of these.
king.
A king. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Peaceful place. And then after 58, military coup.
Military. And then what happened was there was, have to remember, in Baghdad, or in Iraq, the people of Iraq are very nationalistic. They love their country. Everybody does. They're also very tribal. And so if you look at Iraq from say Baghdad's right in the center of Iraq, anything north of Iraq is this Shiite tribe.
Right.
Anything south is the Sunni. Oh, excuse me, the other way around. The Sunnis north, Shiite south. And they hate each other's guts. And so when a government takes over, after the king was gone,
Right.
whoever becomes in charge is either a Shiite or a Sunni.
Right.
And the army was Shiite. And so to get some kind of stability, this is 1958,
Right.
they filled all the positions with Shiites. So, for example, army commanders, they'd bring in all sorts of people from their tribe, and they would take over the government. So, for example, in the first revolution was in July of 58. About the first thing that the army did was put together a group, what they call the Haras al-Qawmi. It was like armed Boy Scouts, and so they get they just scoured the northern part of Iraq and get all these hard-nailed people, and put them in uniform, gave them guns.
You know, as you're talking to me right now, I'm trying to say Saddam Hussein was a Sunni, right? I mean, isn't the Shiite?
He was, excuse me, the northern part was Sunni.
Right, but I mean, in the Ba'ath Party today, or up to 3 weeks ago, the Sunnis
He took over.
took over, had taken over with Hussein, right?
That's
With
right. He
Saddam-
was
he was the next guy.
the Sunni is a tribe north of Baghdad.
Right, and that's where now this is obviously you had a revolution in '58 where the Shiites had power. Then you must have had another
No,
revolution.
no, I should say the Sunnis.
The Sunnis in power. Okay, that's
Right.
the one where Saddam Hussein was.
That's right.
And they only comprised 40% of the population.
That's
and
right.
60% of the population were Shiites.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's where we were right up until 3 weeks ago, right? Basically.
Yeah.
And Hussein came along. He was just a military guy and somehow rose to
Well,
power.
Joe,
Yeah.
when did Hussein take over? When did he gain
I
power?
don't know when he took over.
No.
Well, he had to be around 72 because he was
Because
in power
I went back
30
there
years.
in 70. Let me see. I went back there in the 60s, and
62.
yeah, 62.
Yeah.
And the army was still in control. I left in 58, so that's 4 or 5 years later. The army was in control. These sub-political parties, like the armed Boy Scouts, they were in control. And I think about that time, Saddam Hussein got power.
Yeah, I think he's been in
Yeah,
power. Or been in
about
power
10
for
years.
30, yeah.
Oh, yeah, at least.
He was in power for 30 years. He
Yeah.
himself, so it had to be the early 70s. But so you saw the country go from, in the 50s, a very peaceful, friendly,
Unbelievably.
very educated people,
Yes.
right? And then they go into this military rule.
And all hell broke loose.
Okay, so then they were controlled tremendously. So when you see this, again, your feelings when you see this, you see what's happened to their country. Did you support? When I say support the war, now I don't want to get into this thing about supporting the war, but did you feel that it was necessary for this guy to be overthrown in this manner or whatever?
Well, I couldn't possibly see how anything would change unless he was gone. To be very honest with you. I mean, it was very clear over the past years that he had, I'd say over the past 12 years, it was pretty clear that the group that was then in power, I'm talking about the late 50s, early 60s, they had visions of a very large, united Arab world.
Matter of fact, it's funny you say that because when they just uncovered some papers in his son Uday's place there,
Yeah.
where he said his old man, Saddam, was looking to take over Kuwait,
Oh, that's right.
part of Iran, and somewhere up into Syria, Jordan. Because people forget that in 1920s, Iraq is an artificial country. It was formed through, I guess,
British and
the British and
Yeah.
someone else to put this together. The Ottoman Empire was split up. So they took, when you talk about tribals, you take the Kurds, who were in another country, they grabbed them, and they said, okay, you're up here in the north, and the Shiites and the Sunnis, and people from Iran, people from... So they put all these people, and they made this artificial country made up of tribes. So isn't that correct? I mean, basically back in the 20s when this came up. So he's talking about very nationalistic, but
It was,
prior
it was
to that...
after World War One, wasn't it?
No, it was in the 20s when they first
yeah,
did
I
it.
don't know when they first started, but when I was there, it was pretty. The lines were pretty well drawn. The Sunnis were in power.
Yeah.
The Shiites were not.
Right.
And what happened was that became very, very explicit. Because when the first step was to get a hold of Kuwait,
Right.
and that's 10, 12 years ago when Hussein
That was one of the steps that they had planned that they thought they
was
were
the
always going to
first
do.
one.
That was
They wanted-
1991 they took it.
Yeah, but
That's
they had
right, yeah.
planned this way back,
Yeah.
right, Joe? I mean, this is
Yeah.
what you're
Oh, I
saying.
know about that.
Yeah, I read
And
that.
Harry was against our going in there at that point.
That's not
too.
that's not true at all.
Joe,
Al.
let me ask you.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. Do
I'm
you?
against
I mean,
that one.
obviously you were there. You were there for, I guess, both times there for roughly 9 years.
Can't stand this guy.
You must have met a lot of people, became very friendly with certain people. Have you had contact with them over the years, up until this point, during and the war?
Are you talking about political people or
No,
just
just
Arabs?
friends in
Oh
Iraq.
yes, I mean, for example,
And what types of things are they telling you? Are they saying that they're happy that the Americans were involved? Are they looking for this freedom? Are they have they?
no,
tired of-
they what happened to us as Jesuits, they really took us as they judged us objectively. They didn't think too much of the fact that we're Americans. We were people there. The Jesuits were called over to Baghdad to open up schools for the poorer people.
No, but do you have contact with them now to this
Yes,
day?
yes,
You
because-
do.
Since the war started?
Since the war?
Have you been in touch with anyone?
Oh no,
Oh,
not
so you
since
haven't
the war.
spoken to anybody since
Oh, no.
we've gone back there.
Joe,
Oh,
you,
no.
talk,
Okay.
Joe, you talk about that. When I hear it, now my understanding is that Iraq, or Saddam Hussein, was very tolerant of religions because we have, even though it's a very big Islam world there, there's the Christians. He allowed the Christians. He allowed all faiths
Oh, that's
to.
right.
You know, I mean, here's a guy who's an absolute iron dictator, yet he allowed different religions. And now, since this Americans have gone in there, we may find a squelching of Christianity in Iraq because these secular heads, these mullahs and so forth, may start to really crack down. It may become a what do you call it? A fundamentalist Islamic state.
I don't know. I think you hear about these mullahs and everybody getting into follow me. I think it's just a basic. They take their chances and play their cards to get power.
Well,
Well,
what's
I
going to
mean,
happen now? Who do you think is going to grab the power now? The United States is going to take people. They're going to allow these open elections. A lot of people are saying that they'll sit by, they'll allow these elections, but if we don't like who they put up or who wins, we're not going to allow it to happen. We're going to be. I mean, well, really, what's going to happen?
you
Who
gonna
are we
do
looking for to take the government over? People that obviously agree with American views.
Well, to be very honest with you, I think it's way too early to even ask that question. The big thing that's going on in Iraq right now,
Well, there's got to be a power grab going on.
but I think what's going to happen now, for the time being, I don't think there's going to be a power grab because they don't know who to grab so
Yeah.
early.
Right.
The big question over there now is whether we should trust the Americans. The people do not trust Americans over there.
Is this right now because of this war, or prior
No,
to this?
oh,
Goes, and why is that? Why don't they trust
Well,
Americans?
because when they first were the Arabs were kicked out of Kuwait by the Americans.
The Iraqis were kicked.
The Iraqis were kicked
Correct.
out. There was a stage in that war when the entire Iraqi army was heading back to Baghdad, and you had to, by then they didn't have these highways; you had to just go over the moon practically.
Right.
And the American forces caught the whole army
The Air Force.
completely out in the desert, and they plastered them.
Right.
And then at that time in the States, the American casualties were fairly low. And so what happened is the president and people in the States, they decided to, in the South, they approached the Shiites. And they said, rebel against Saddam Hussein. And first of all, is get a hold of Basra and get a hold of the oil fields in the south.
Mhm.
And then way up north were the Kurds. That's beyond the
Right.
Sunni. The Kurds, and they said to them, now look, rise up against the government. Get a hold of those northern oil fields.
Right.
And what happened was these people said, fine. But they moved under the impression that they would be backed up by the states,
By the U.S.
by the U.S.
Right.
And
Well,
so-
we did back them in a certain.
No,
no. We imposed no-fly zones.
No.
which caused
This
people
is prior,
freedom to
no,
move.
was 10 years
prior
ago.
to that. Prior to that, Alan.
See?
It's been imposed since '91.
Alan,
Yeah.
prior to
Go
the
ahead.
no-fly
So,
zones.
so what happened was the Kurds in the north and the Shiites in the south said, okay, we'll go ahead. So they picked up their rifles and they came down from the north, the Kurds, up from the south, the Shiites.
Yeah.
And they presumed that the states with all their military and stuff would be back them up.
Another Bay of Pigs.
Exactly. So anyway, they found out that they had no backing. The states pulled out.
They
and-
begged us to get back in there to help
That's
them.
right.
and
They
we
wou-
would do it.
they wouldn't
But you
do
know
it.
the funny thing is, during the negotiations, my understanding is that Saddam Hussein was a little trickier than General Schwarzkopf because he asked. They said they said these are my no-fly zones, north and south.
Norman's still alive,
Okay,
though.
wait a minute. And they said they're my fly zone, no-fly zones. And Saddam Hussein said, well, can we have helicopters? And they said, sure, helicopters would take you, ferry people around. Said, like, can we have them armed? And they said, sure. And he took those armed helicopters, and that's what he gassed those guys with. He gassed, Chemical Alley ended up gassing 5,000 Kurds in
Yeah,
one
but
thing.
that's what's happened. The thing is, they presumed, the states presumed, that Saddam Hussein was gone,
Yeah.
and he wasn't.
No.
And
Okay.
he was still very much in control. And so what he was able to do was
Clean them out.
pump new life into his army, and they wiped out the Kurds.
However, I know, and the same army that disappeared, which is, I want to ask you that question. Go
Okay,
ahead,
but
Alan.
first we're going to take a break, though. Our guest this
Okay.
evening is Joe Floucher, and we're talking about Iraq. Got a lot of interesting.
You weren't known as
information.
Baghdad Joe or anything like that, were you?
No,
By any
I
chance,
wasn't.
right now?
That's Baghdad Harry. We'll be right back.
Check.
Hey, one other thing about us backing out in 90 or 91
91.
was that we were really, Bush was a confirmed UN guy, and he went in there with UN, and he did what the UN wanted. And the UN said that's not what our mission
The UN wasn't going to allow us to go into Baghdad.
So thanks to the UN.
No, it wasn't. No, that's not true, Colin. You're not talking. Let's not talk Baghdad. What happened was, Colin Powell and Bush
Right.
when they asked these guys to uprise, Hussein came in with his troops, started slaughtering them. These Kurds and the Shiites down
Wait a
south.
minute, you saying this
went
happened
and
before
begged-
91?
No, it happened right at the end of the war.
Well,
right
that's
at the
what
end
I
of
was
the,
talking about.
But I'm saying, I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why.
Before all that
Forget the Baghdad. Forget Baghdad
we
stuff.
listen
You're right.
to the
You're
United
probably,
Nations.
Listen, you're
That's
right
why we
about
didn't
Baghdad,
go.
but you're not listening here. We're talking north and south. We're talking with that area with the fly zones. They begged the United States to get them. They're getting slaughtered, and they said, "Please help us." And the pilots, the American pilots, flew over.
What Harry
they
doesn't
stood by.
understand is-
They stood by when these guys were slaughtered. And Bush, they were trying to say, "Hey, we're out of it. We're going to back away." And then
That
they
was the
finally said,
United
"Let's get back in."
Nations. That was
no,
the United
they
Nations.
appealed directly to the United States to get in there and help them, and the United States said no. Bush said no, and it only took period a matter of weeks or months. It wasn't like a year. It wasn't like a year. It was like
Because the devil you know is better than
they
the devil you
no.
don't know?
They just felt that they had minimized the casualties. They weren't going to go into Baghdad, and they didn't want to take the risk. And then
mission
it
was
became,
complete.
but it came. That's right. But they became so. They realized it was such a slaughter that they finally had to go in and institute
the
those
slaughter?
and stop it. I mean, I don't know whether the no-fly zone or they finally sent their pilots up to start to attack these guys and drive them out of there. But I mean, it wasn't the thing to do with Baghdad at the time. It was the uprising. They wanted to uprise.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, that's
I-
really
I'm
what
pretty
I'm
What are you
Trying
talking
to
about?
please too
Now
many
or
No,
10
back
years
in
ago?
'91 when the Kurds uprose and the Shiites uprose.
That's why
and they
this
started to try to
particular.
rebel.
No good
Hussein went in to
deed
put
goes
him down.
unpunished, and that
These
was
guys
the deed.
begged us
When we got
to
killed
stop
for
him
it.
because
We should
he was
just
slaughtering
gone in
by
there
the
and taken care of
thousands.
business.
And
And the
Bush
same
would
goes
not
for
react, and
Syria.
Colin Powell would not react.
That's right. We should
because
get
they
them while
felt
we
that-
have the troops
We
there.
just got out of
Your
there with
weapons
minimum
there.
casualties. Let's leave it alone.
Do we
But
have
then
any-
finally-
do we have any
finally had
cruise
to-
missiles
We
left?
finally had to go in. We finally had to.
We'll make a call Raytheon.
attack
Place an order. Will you?
his army.
Tell
to
him we
stop
want
it.
another
That's how they
500
finally
cruise
stopped it.
missiles.
But, I mean, it was in a matter of weeks. They begged us and begged us. They were
About
getting
5 guys
slaughtered.
drove up here.
But I mean, that's
Yeah, but he was from
that's
Fort
not the
Useless,
status
so.
quo. I'm talking about. I don't care.
Where are they
going to
go? Iraq?
Bush said no.
All right.
I'm
Oh, you're saying yes? They don't trust us because of the
Because
fact
of
that,
that.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I understand. That's why they didn't get that welcome that everybody thought
right,
they were going to
exactly.
get this liberation.
I
You
mean,
know,
we trusted them once before.
yeah, trust them once before. It takes
Well,
a long
look,
time.
I'll
to
tell
get
you
it.
what. After we rebuild their country and there's WalMarts and Home Depots all over the place, they're going to love us.
They're going to hate us. It's going to be just like here.
McDonald's, they're going to love us.
Listen to this guy.
But I mean,
All the kids going to have backpacks on them when they go into school, and they're going to have the Nintendos and the Xboxes.
I got to ask a
and-
question about war, Joe.
They'll love America.
You've been around the world. I want to ask you a question when we get back. Think about this for a minute. When we fight a war of liberation and we're going to impose a democracy, in history,
I love the
when
way he
people-
says
in
impose
history,
democracy.
When, in
you know,
history,
I love it. I
in
love
history,
it.
When people are oppressed,
We're
eventually
we're forcing
they
people
have
into
enough of
freedom.
it,
I
and
love
they rise
this.
up and
Forcing
they overthrow
people.
the guy. It might take them 100 years.
You're going to be free whether you want
You
it
know
or
what I mean?
not.
It might
the
take
way
100
Harris
years.
said, right?
Would the
if you,
Iraqis
if you don't accept
have-
freedom, we're going to
if
kill
we
you.
left them alone and all this horrible thing,
You're gonna like being free,
30
buddy.
Years would they have overthrown this guy?
I love Harry
You know
when he
what I'm
says
saying?
these things.
Don't the people
We're gonna
eventually
impose
have enough?
freedom on these
Where
people.
do you draw the line to say, you guys are too I don't know, you're too wimpy, too stupid to ever overthrow these guys who you have by the neck? We're gonna do it for you.
In the light of history, yeah, they would be able to.
They would be right, and isn't it true when that
You've seen
happens?
someone in your own life.
Yes, it's so. It's a, hey,
Ah,
so
sure.
when it happens that way, when the people do it themselves, I think you have a greater foundation of democracy than you do it the other way. That's all I'm trying to say.
Let them kill each other.
No, I'm serious.
Oh, I
want to ask that question. It's too deep for those guys.
I think that you're
Too deep.
The thing you may
On
miss.
both sides and let them go at it.
Yeah.
Well, you may disagree with me also. Then you disagree. You're on their
Well, no,
side.
all I'm saying is that 9/11 was a big thing.
But it wasn't Iraq. It wasn't.
How do you
Iraq,
know
Joe.
it wasn't?
It wasn't Iraq.
How do you know that, Harry?
Where's the terrorism going?
Holy
Harry,
Here we go again.
Harry,
Here we go
we're in
again.
color yellow right now.
Here-
What are you
here we
talking
go
about?
again.
We're
Joe,
safe.
9/11 was
Okay.
not Iraq.
Started. No, I know
I
that.
don't care, but it means why did we invade? Why didn't we invade
All right,
Canada for that
Come on, let's
matter?
go. Why don't we invade? Why don't we go get France while we're at it?
Second.
Why did they? Why did they say they?
Hi, I'm Alan Giordano. Welcome back to Let's Talk About It. My co-host Harry Carboni, and our guest this evening is Joseph Floucher, a former Jesuit priest.
And a newly converted to the Allen and Colin point of view relative to the war in Iraq and 9/11 and so forth. Joe believes Iraq was in.
Joe,
That's why I can't ask
I'm-
any questions anymore.
Joe, 9/11. What do you think? You think Iraq had anything to do with 9/11? Do you think Saddam Hussein had anything to do with what happened?
No, I don't.
You don't. How can you say that?
Why should I?
Well, I mean, obviously, this guy was
He
pulling.
reminds me of Sean
No,
Hannity.
no.
He reminds me of Sean Hannity.
No, but-
the most obnoxious guy I've ever met in my life.
Okay, obviously, the man had the money. He had the connections. He had the reasons to do it. I mean, obviously, he wanted to get back at us from 1991.
Well-
You don't think that he had anything to do with what happened in 9/11? I mean, you can absolutely say
said
that he
no.
had nothing to do with it.
I really have no reason why I should say he did.
Okay,
He did.
Well, who do you think did?
Well, the guy they've been looking for the past.
You think
few
he's
years.
the only one that had any involvement? He pulled this all off on his own.
I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
Yeah.
You know, because we have so many enemies in that
You're
part of the
such-
world,
Oh,
including Hussein,
you have some
Syria.
Enemies, we have enemies right in this part of the world,
Yeah.
Alan. Right in this studio.
right in this
Right
studio.
in this
Yeah.
studio on this side.
Okay.
But I mean, it seems to me that the status questionis has changed a bit here.
Yeah.
In other words, what people are worried about now is not what happened 2 years ago, but that you get these suicide bombers, the possibility of these of big weapons and stuff like that. What they're worried about people now is if these people who are terrorists, it seems that the way things are going, more and more weapons of mass destruction
Yeah.
now is a good possibility that they can get a hold of that.
Yeah.
Boy,
But
And that's what they're aiming at here with going
okay,
after Baghdad.
we've already proven that some of the people that have been responsible, some of the terrorist attacks on Americans, the Achille Laurel, this particular fellow, one of them that they caught over in Iraq, was involved in that. You heard the term shock and awe? That's when we bombed them. We hit them with cruise missiles.
Yeah,
They were
right.
coming from every angle. You think that was payback for 9/11, Achille Laurel, and
No.
who knows
No.
how many other terrorist
you are
attacks
living
on
in a
Americans
dream.
around the world?
You're living
You
in
don't
a
think
dream.
some of that didn't play into some of that?
I think that's a military
It
strategy.
had to.
Alan, that's a military strategy that was written up way before
Yeah.
9/11. That's a military strategy. It's a military term, shock and awe. That was written in a book.
Okay. No,
many,
but I'm
many
using.
years ago.
All right,
okay?
let me get back on track here.
Better.
You know the Iraqi people better than anybody in this room. Okay, how are they going to accept the Americans from this point on? They're gonna welcome us with open arms. Are they gonna work with us? Are they, as Harry says, we're trying to force democracy on these people. Will they accept it?
I would say the big thing, if they can honestly get to trust the Americans,
Yeah, it is.
they'll work with us.
Let the voters speak.
What's not to trust about democracy? What's not to trust about freedom? They haven't had it for years. They've lived under a tyrant. They've seen their families murdered, killed, disappear.
Well,
Why would they not trust the people that is showing them? I mean, they're coming in, they're showering them
They're
with
killing
food,
them. They're
with
coming in and
clothes.
killing a lot
no,
of
no,
them.
no,
Oh, no, they're
They're killing the
here.
bad guys,
This is
Harry.
a bad guy. Right?
They're
I got a
killing the
picture of that
guys
little
that have
boy
been
here.
killing their
Here's
families
a bad
for
guy.
years.
Here's
Yeah.
a bad guy. Let our audience see
All
this
right, Harry,
picture.
show
You
your
want to bring it
picture.
up here? The bad guy that they just blew his arms
when you
off.
asked me that question, you sounded
Yeah.
like a person who's had freedom
Yeah, exactly.
and so on all your life.
Yeah. Well, we have here
But
if
I
we
mean,
live here in
but
America.
the point is, if they haven't had it in another country,
But they did have it. They had it. They had it before Saddam Hussein
Alan,
took over.
50%, over 50% of the Iraqi population is under the age of 15 years old. So over half the people never knew anything other than Saddam Hussein. So they didn't know freedom before
Well,
that.
they have parents, they have
They-
grandparents,
the parents,
they have
Alan,
extended families.
Alan, no, they
These
don't.
people do have
Hussein
freedom.
killed a lot of them off.
Yeah.
okay?
One of
Oh,
those
so the
kids
guy
were-
killed. He killed.
I-
See that? Said he just killed their whole family.
That's not the,
Yeah.
I asked, folks. I asked a question of Joe and Alan. I say to myself, you want freedom. There's a lot of countries. It might take 100 years to throw off the yoke of a dictator, and I think when that happens, I think when the people rise up and overthrow him, they understand freedom a little bit more, and they may aim for dictatorship. I mean, democracy and so forth. Whereby this is an artificial liberation. We had a power go in and liberate these people. All right, and maybe they don't want them. There's many forms.
I mean,
of
the people
Look, there's
of
many
this town need to be
There's
liberated,
many
Harry.
forms of democracy. Turkey's a democratic
Didn't hear
country.
from Joe?
I thought you had long ago.
No, Turkey. Let me talk about. No, Turkey's a democratic country. It's not. Turkey is a democratic country,
Yes,
but it's
it
not the same as the United States democracy. There's different forms of democracy.
Right.
Is that correct, Joe?
Yeah, I suppose it was. But the thing is, you can sit and talk democracy until you're blue in the face, especially when you're talking about people who have never
Never experienced it.
experienced it.
Yeah.
So how can you convince them?
Well, whatever you're offering them has to be better than what they've lived under for the last 20 years.
How would
It
they
has
know?
to be.
How would they know?
They,
Well,
they have to
geez.
know that.
How would they know?
What more can you do than them?
Well, I'll tell you what
They've
you
already,
can do, Joe. How about this fact, Joe? That they needed police, they needed cops. One of the
Yeah.
things we did, so they needed 2,000 cops real quick. They took 2,000 of Iraqi police.
That's right.
They say they vetted them in a week. They vetted them in a week. I saw a picture on TV the other day. Some bank robbers. These same cops were kicking these guys in the head, stomping on them. Now, if you're in your neighborhood and the same cop who had you imprisoned or your family in prison, he's now back as the cop on the beat. What are they to make of that?
You're talking about apples and oranges.
No, I'm saying the Iraqi cops that they just put on the streets there. They went and got 2,000 of the old cops, put them
All
back
right.
out on the street. Now, 3 weeks ago, they were working for Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
They were taking guys and imprisoning them, maybe torturing them, doing whatever they were doing. Now they're supposedly
Hey, there are folks
now they're
now
supposedly
involved.
now they're supposedly good cops.
That's
If I were
right.
living in a house and I saw the same cop that 3 weeks ago could have had me in prison just for saying something bad about Saddam, now he's out in the street, he's my friend, I don't believe it.
Guess what they're using?
And
now?
that's why I
American
say you
dollars.
have to experience.
That's right. You have the experience. I'm agreeing with you,
Yeah,
Joe.
no, I mean, these cops that they got, all right, they're probably all Sunni.
Yes, I'm sure they are because that's what the party was. They're all
You know,
They,
Sunni.
this-
hate the Shiites.
Yeah, this will all change. They're just trying to restore some sort of order there.
yeah,
And they are, Harry. They have to do something.
And
It's
I
either
think-
that or military police.
They've got to, and when the people can honestly
military
say
police.
there is order being restored,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe they can begin to trust the Americans. But you could talk to them from now until doomsday and say, we want you to, you can trust us. They say,
I'll tell
"Wait,
you.
wait, how can you say that?
All the pictures that I've seen on TV recently of these people just walking off with refrigerators and air conditioners, and they look
right,
pretty
but-
happy to me.
Oh,
But they
Most of them
bring-
haven't had a refrigerator.
be
or-
looting
The last
more.
time you read
Huh?
the paper, they've been bringing them back now.
They're bringing them back?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? You know why they're bringing them back? They don't have electricity.
No, they got the
You know-
Millers got on thing and they said, bring this back. And
Bring
they
this
got
stuff
it
back. They're
Yeah.
bringing it back.
And
They
they're
didn't.
bringing it back.
They didn't bring the all the stuff they took from the museums though. All the
No, but
artifacts.
that was planned, Alan. That's more of the.
That's different. That was
Look, let me tell you something, Alan.
completely
The
organization.
Democrats,
Yeah.
this is a democracy. The Democratic, the guys who were the Democrats in the Iraqi parties, they took the rugs and the chairs and so forth. But the Republicans in
Yeah.
the new Democrat democracy
They
called
took the
Iraq,
artifacts.
they took the artifacts and the
Right.
money and the gold.
gold,
That's
everything.
how
But
it
they got
works.
the- They put the huge, in the news this morning, they got large contingent of the FBI over there.
Yeah, a lot of FBI over there. They should have.
Yeah.
They're supposed to have 60,000 military police. They need 60,000 cops down there. And we haven't brought.
Don't
them
you
over.
think that? I mean, this guy knew that he was going to lose his country. He knew he was going to lose the war. He wasn't completely stupid. Don't you think they already raped the country? Don't you think they've already
Well, they
just
just
taken
found-
everything
hey,
of any
today-
value out
today
of there?
in the
They
palace,
must have moved.
Today in the palace tonight,
billions
They
out
mentioned
of there.
tonight in one of his palaces they found a false wall.
Yeah.
They went behind it. They found boxes of money, $320 million so far, counting of money.
I hope it was Iraqi money.
Yeah, Iraqi
No, United States money.
Oh,
United
US
States
money. Good,
320
good.
million behind
Okay,
a wall
yeah.
and a thing.
I'll
But
pay for some bombs.
Sure. Well, that'll buy a few of those. What were they?
let me ask you,
for?
Joe, what do you think happened? Joe, my understanding was before this war, he
that?
still had an army of some 500 to 800,000
Ooh,
guys.
I love them.
Who is he now?
Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
Cruise missiles.
Now, we know they bombed and killed a lot of them, right? I mean, let's say they killed 100,000, 200,000. I mean, still, what happened to the other 400,000 people? How could these people just take their uniforms off and dissolve into the
They all
countryside?
look the same.
They all look the same. Oh, that's not a race. well,
That's a fact.
it's a fact. Yeah, but what's going to happen? These
Harry,
people,
they all have black hair,
but
beards,
but
3-4
they all have
day
their
growth on
mustache. What do you think's going to
Mustache.
happen, though? I mean, these guys, when they
Towel
go back
on
and they've
their
been,
head.
like you say, they were Sunnis. They were pretty violent men.
Well, I would
Profiling.
say for
Racial
every
profiling.
1,000 Sunnis you had, I would say 950 felt like the rest of Iraq. They were afraid of. A lot of them, the driving motive was fear,
Okay.
and they were afraid.
But when these guys, so the average soldier probably is not hated as much as maybe a guy who was a party official or somebody way up at the top.
The average soldier would be, no, I mean, they really zero in on, they know who their enemies are. But I mean, an average soldier may be your next door neighbor.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, they could just go back home
So
and
you can't paint the army with a wide brush with one color.
so. You think the prognosis looks good for Iraq? I mean, do you know? Or what do you feel? What's your feeling on this?
Well, I honestly feel that there's no other way to go. Be very honest with you.
So you're in the Allen and Colin camp.
No, I just
No,
feel.
he's in the common sense camp.
I just feel that you've got to. The thing is,
War is
show-
okay, Joe.
Show them what it means.
Okay, Joe. Joe, war is okay. In other words,
That's not what
Go
he
ahead. No,
said.
Joe.
Harry.
Well, let me, Joe. As a Joe,
Harry,
let's put your
peace
Jesuit. Let's put
through
your Jesuit
strength.
training on for a second here. The Pope. Now, I have a sister and brother-in-law, such stout Catholics. They make me feel like such a sinner when I see them. Okay.
Well, you are, Harry.
The Pope comes out and says he condemns the war. This is prior to the war even starting.
He's
condemns
Polish.
condemns it, and says that is immoral. Now,
Now, let's say
okay, how does a Catholic support the war when the Pope says war should be condemned and it's an immoral act? How does a Catholic support it? I mean, here's the Pope, who is our leader.
You're a Catholic,
saying it. I
Harry.
understand that, but
Yeah.
I'm saying I'm against the war.
Yeah.
Not because the Pope said it was, but the point is I'm just against all wars. I would see this little kid there. I think there's other
That's
ways
what
to
the
do
Pope
it.
is supposed to
So
say.
tell me as a
He's
Jesuit, how do
poping.
you answer
I
that?
mean, but it seems to be you just can't
Pope's
isolate.
confused.
You just can't isolate that one.
The
question.
Pope said this. Now, as a Jesuit, I'm just saying. Is
Now,
telling you.
the next question would be, then what do we do?
you don't go to war. You try to do it the most. Look at Joe.
Has Harry ever heard of
Let this
separation of
continue?
church and
Oh,
state?
that's not there.
Harry,
Joe,
have you heard of that?
Joe, if Saddam Hussein, we went in there with these smart bombs. Why couldn't we have taken them out all these years? We have all these bombs.
we didn't
you
have as
you
many
can hit-
smart
no,
bombs. We had a lot of
We don't have
dumb
as many
bombs
smart
then.
people as I said, but smart bombs we supposedly have. Why couldn't we have taken them out with a little assassination team and so forth?
Probably, but they didn't have enough reason to do it.
What was the reason this time? I forget now. Again,
They were
The-
afraid that with
9/11.
no.
Okay,
they
wasn't
were-
that
they were
weapons of
afraid.
mass destruction?
That's right.
That's right.
I haven't found any yet.
Yes, they have.
They haven't found any
They
yet.
didn't get there
They
yet.
haven't found any yet.
Will you be patient?
Yes, give us time, will
Well,
you?
you're like saying
Yeah,
you're
really.
Well, I think you got to have proof before you go to war and kill.
Countries the
Look at this
size
little
of
kid. I
California.
think you got to have
Shipped them
proof.
all to Syria.
I think you
Turkey.
got to have proof before you go and start killing people. That's what I think, Joe. And I'm not a man of the cloth.
well. I mean,
Well,
they
you're a
thought
phony.
they had enough proof.
I don't think they had enough
they're
proof.
They're convinced that they had weapons of mass destruction, and were convinced that they
Joe,
had,
Joe, you don't
Joe.
have to apologize to
I'm
this
not
fellow.
He's not
Our
apologizing.
president, Harry, our president. Our president felt it was the right thing to do, Harry, and good Americans backed our president.
Is that right, Joe?
Harry.
So I'm a
Your
bad American
president.
because I disagree with the
No,
president?
you're a traitor, Harry.
I'm a
You
traitor
have
now. You see
not.
how it's all changed?
You
I'm a
are.
traitor.
Everything you say and do.
I'm a traitor. See the way this guy
You
talks?
are.
This is an American. This is the patriot,
Treason.
the true patriot. Draft dodging Alan
Joe,
Giordano.
okay, Joe.
I'm a draft
Just
dodger.
remember what you're eating tonight.
Joe, we're eating fish tonight, right?
No, I have
Harry's having a roast.
I have a wartime dispensation. When you're in a war, in combat, or in a service, you have a dispensation. You don't have to eat meat on Friday.
I'm
Joe.
over 65.
Yeah,
I
and
have
I'm
dispensation.
almost there too.
Joe, you're
How about you,
absolutely
Joe?
right. What we did was absolutely just. It was right. What we did was we freed and oppressed people. We took out a dictator. We took a murderer out.
And we may have.
We're freeing a people.
Circuited a lot of stuff. that could
Exactly.
happen
We've
last
Right
probably
away,
saved a
Joe.
lot. We've saved thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of American
Hundreds of
lives,
thousands.
innocent people.
Hundreds of
you never know
thousands.
what could have happened. But you want to know the great thing about this is not you don't. It doesn't end with Iraq. What could now happen with Syria?
Oh, I hope
Okay.
we go there.
We can
Maybe-
clean out the whole
We could
toilet.
clean the entire. We
Oh.
could clean all these tyrants out, couldn't
Oh.
we? Shouldn't we do that? Why should we
Why
stop
not,
with
Joe?
Iraq?
You're for Joe. Why not? You're with them.
I'm.
He wants. Look at. He wants Syria. Then he wants Iran. He just wants to go a ring right around the ring.
does?
This guy, Alan, and this guy over here,
What's he going to
Colin.
go out and order the war, sir?
Well, he's going to keep talking it up. He's going to call anybody who disagrees with that point of view. He loves war.
No, I
The
think we should
killing.
take a close
He
look
loves.
at Syria
First of all,
before we
because he
leave.
knows his president, his commander in
think
chief,
about
will
it
never
for a
win
while.
re-election the way things are going.
Oh, he could win right now,
They
Harry.
Respect strength.
Yeah, that's
Joe-
all they respect.
Joe,
Peace through strength, Colin.
through strength.
Peace through strength, Harry. Remember that. It's always worked.
War is wrong. You
It's an
guys,
effective way of
what
diplomacy.
you are, Alan, you're a bully.
No, I'm not a
Before we
bull.
run out of time.
Colin Rice is a bully.
Before we
Joe,
run out of
you're just
time.
misguided. But I know you'll come. It's not too late to change,
Tomorrow,
Joe.
the race tomorrow?
Oh yeah. By the way, there's an Easter race. Joe, you run 5K Easter race at the. It starts at St. Mary's Church.
I'm glad
St.
you
Mary's
let
School,
Joe
rather.
talk,
St. Mary's
Harry.
School 5K. The race starts at 10, the running part, and the walk starts at 9:30. But listen, what we're having here. Ubers is going to be there, making fresh corn chowder, fresh cornbread. We've got a Easter bunny.
That's Jason
We have a kid
from
race. A kids race right after the about 11 o'clock with Easter eggs. We have an Easter egg hunt. We have a bunny coming in from Shaw's. Okay, that's going to be a bunny be dressed out giving out things. We have bagels and
bunny.
buns. Bagels and buns from Andover's going to be there.
bunny.
Freshly baked bagels and
Wendy's
muffins.
coming, huh?
We've got-
Wendy, you hear
I mean,
that,
we got
Tom?
more food. So if you don't want to run, just come over to eat. Okay, and it's only. Well, you have to register before. We register tomorrow, $15. Okay, and it's for
It's a
good-
$15 fee, Harry, to run.
if
you
you-
can walk though.
You can walk.
You can
There's
walk
a lot
with
of walkers
Dennis.
this
The
year.
judge you can
Dennis is
walk.
one is
Yeah.
walk. Okay, quite a few things.
Jilson Square, you meet. This is where it all
Meet.
takes off.
Walk starts at 9:30.
Okay.
The run starts at 10.
And you have the Willimantic Police.
Okay.
They're
And if
gonna-
you're Iraqi, it's a free entry fee. And if you're one of the soldiers, Saddam's soldiers who's come here, not only that, you may win a prize, but you just got to keep moving. Don't look over. Don't stop and turn around. Look back. Because Alan Giordano, one of the greatest patriots ever known in America, might be. You want to come, Alan?
No,
Have you ever met a
no.
patriot like him? Joe, seriously, you talked to him tonight. You've never met him before.
Joe,
is that a patriot or what?
I wanna
It wasn't-
thank
we
you
didn't
for
talk
coming.
about patriotism.
Oh, but I thought he was a patriot.
Joe Spaces.
Joe, thanks for coming. I'm sorry Harry wouldn't allow you to.
That's okay.
You know,
I'm
but
sorry
maybe we
too,
can
Joe.
have
I
you
can't
back.
do it.
Maybe we can have you back again when Harry's
No, maybe
sick.
we can have you back, Joe, when Syria gets attacked, and we can discuss what's happening there with these guys.
Syria's being real good right now.
Yeah, Syria is going to be good.
All right, North Korea then.
Korea is
Not
going to be
Syria,
good too.
North Korea.
North Korea's already talking about
Goodbye.
disarming. What do you think of that, Harry? Peace through strength. Good night, folks. Say good night, Harry.
I can't. I'm speechless.